The snow was falling in slow, steady flakes when I stepped onto Ethan's porch with the casserole dish warm against my hands and a gift bag looped over my wrist. I had cooked all morning, not because anyone asked me to, but because for 69 Christmases, I'd always shown up with food, with gifts, with something that made the day feel like family. I pressed the doorbell and waited. The porch light flickered against the snow collecting on my coat. The door opened, and Lydia stood there like she had been waiting to be annoyed. "You're early," she said. "I wanted everything to stay warm," I answered. "Merry Christmas, Lydia." She stepped aside just enough so I wouldn't brush her sleeve as I walked in. The house was decorated, lights on the banister, candles on the counter, but the air didn't feel warm, not the way Christmas used to feel. I carried the casserole into the kitchen and set the bag on the counter. Lydia followed me, arms crossed. "We didn't ask for this," she said quietly, like she wanted it to sting more than she wanted to say it. I kept arranging the dishes. "I know, I brought it anyway." She sighed, loud enough for me to hear. I didn't react. I felt the jab, but I let it pass. Sometimes silence is stronger than anything you say. Ethan walked in from the living room. He didn't hug me. He didn't even try to pretend. "Mom, you should have called first." "It's Christmas dinner," I said. I didn't think I needed an invitation. He glanced at Lydia, then at the casserole, then back at me. "Yeah, well, we had plans." "Plans?" I asked softly. "I thought dinner was at 5. "It is," Lydia cut in, "but we didn't expect extra things." Extra things, as if homemade food and wrapped gifts were clutter. I opened the gift bag and placed the gifts under the tree, one for Ethan, one for Sophie, one for Lydia. I kept my voice steady. "I brought something small, nothing fancy." Lydia gave a tight smile. "You really didn't need to." The three of us sat at the table. No one said grace, no one said anything. Forks scraped plates louder than they should have. The silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt like a door slowly shutting. I looked around. "Where's Sophie?" "Upstairs," Lydia said. "She's busy." Busy on Christmas dinner night. That told me more than anything else had. I tried to make conversation. "The house looks nice." "Thanks," Lydia answered, her tone sharp enough to end it. Halfway through the meal, Ethan dropped his fork. The sound wasn't loud, but it cut the room in half. He took a breath, then another, and finally looked at me. Really looked at me. His face tightened like he was about to say something he'd rehearsed. "Mom," he said, "you don't belong here anymore." My hands went still around my fork. The room felt suddenly colder than the porch outside. I let the words sit for a moment. Then I asked, "You mean I'm not family?" Lydia spoke before he did. "That's what he said." Ethan didn't correct her. I felt the hit, sharp and clean, but pain is one thing, dignity is another. I put my fork down, folded my napkin, and pushed my chair back quietly. "Fine," I said. "As you wish." Ethan shifted in his seat. "Mom, wait." But he didn't stand. He didn't reach for me. He just let the moment sit there on the table like another dish no one wanted. I walked to the tree and took the gifts I had placed under it, one by one, silently. Lydia watched me the way someone watches a commercial they don't care about, waiting for it to end. I picked up my coat, slid it on, and wrapped my scarf around my neck. At the door, I turned the knob and opened it. Cold air rushed in, brushing against my face. I didn't look back when I said, "Remember your words." I stepped onto the porch. The snow crunched beneath my boots. I heard Lydia whisper something behind me, then a small laugh, the kind that tries to hide insecurity under arrogance. I didn't react. Not one muscle moved. I walked down the steps. The wind hit my face, but it still felt warmer than that dining room. Christmas lights glowed from the houses across the street. Families were gathered around tables. Mine had just dismissed me like an inconvenience. When I reached my car, I set the gift bag on the passenger seat. My hands rested on the steering wheel for a long second. I didn't grip it hard. I didn't shake. I simply breathed. Respect goes both ways. They had forgotten that. And I had finally heard it clearly. I started the engine. The radio came on softly. Quiet carols, the kind that used to make me smile. Tonight, they felt like background noise to a decision forming inside me. As I drove away, the house shrank in the rearview mirror. I didn't look back, not once. You don't look back at a place that tells you you're not welcome. When I reached my own driveway, the porch light flicked on automatically. The small glow felt more like home than anything I'd felt all evening. I carried the gifts inside, set them on the counter, and took off my coat. "That's fine," I whispered to myself. "That's over." I closed the curtains. The house settled around me, quiet, steady, honest. Tomorrow they would remember what they said. Tomorrow I would remember what to do about it. The house was still dark when I woke up. I didn't sleep much. I didn't toss and turn either. I just lay there listening to the heater kick in, the kind of steady hum that reminded me I was in a house where no one asked me to justify my presence. When the clock on the nightstand read 6:12, I got up, put on my robe, and walked to the kitchen. I made coffee the way I always did, 1 scoop more than necessary because I liked it strong. As it brewed, the smell filled the room, warm and bitter and familiar. I wrapped my hands around the mug and stood at the counter for a long minute, letting the heat settle into my palms. The snow outside had stopped. The sun hadn't risen yet. Everything felt still. My phone buzzed on the table. A message from Margaret. "Merry Christmas, Helen. Call me when you're awake." I took a sip of coffee, sat down, and hit the call button. She answered before the first ring finished. "Helen? Honey, you sound tired." "I'm fine," I said. "Just up early." "You're never up early unless something's wrong." I breathed out slowly. "They threw me out last night." There was silence on her end, then one sharp exhale. "On Christmas?" "Yes." "Ethan?" she asked. "And Lydia," I said. "Mostly Lydia." "What did they say?" I stared at the mug, watching the steam drift upward. "That I don't belong there anymore." Her voice dropped. "They said that to you?" "They did." I heard her shuffle around, probably grabbing her glasses, probably ready to drive over. "Helen, I swear." "Don't," I said quietly. "It's done." "No. No, it's not. People don't get to treat you like that." I let her vent. Margaret always reacted first and thought second. I was the opposite. I had learned long ago that decisions were better when made in the morning, not in anger. When she stopped talking, I said, "They'll remember it. Trust me." "Helen," her voice softened, "what are you going to do?" I looked around the kitchen, my chair, my mug, my heat, my peace. Last night had hurt, but the sting had turned into something sharper, something cleaner by morning. "I'm going to take my life back," I said. Margaret went quiet. Then she asked, "Do you need help?" "Yes," I said. "I need you to be a witness later. Not today, but soon." "You know I'm here," she said. "I know." I hung up and set the mug down. The house was brightening from the faint morning light. I walked to the drawer near the fridge and pulled out a notebook. Plain black cover, pages still crisp. I sat at the table, opened to the first page, and wrote in clear letters. Step 1, call Martin. Step 2, bank. I tapped the pen on the page and added a line at the bottom. No one humiliates me twice. My handwriting didn't shake. That surprised me. Maybe because the decision had already formed before I wrote it. Maybe because last night's cold porch had carved something new into me. My phone vibrated again. A message from Ethan this time. "We should talk." Yesterday got tense. Let's reset. Reset. A neat word for pretending nothing happened. I set the phone face down. I didn't respond. A second message came a moment later. "Mom, let's just be civil. You know how Lydia gets when things aren't planned." Civil. Another word for do what we want. I didn't reply. Instead, I washed my mug, dried it, and put it in the cabinet. My movements were slow and steady, not rushed, not angry, just deliberate. The phone buzzed again. I let it sit. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any reply. I put on a sweater, grabbed my keys, and locked the front door behind me. The snow on the walkway crunched under my shoes. The air was cold enough to sting my cheeks, but it felt refreshing. Honest, like the world was reminding me of something simple. I had my own life, my own home, my own choices. I started the car and let the heater warm the windshield. The plan was simple, precise, the kind that didn't need emotion, just action. First the lawyer, then the bank. Not revenge, not anger, correction. People forget that respect isn't owed, it's returned. And when someone removes theirs, you don't beg for it back, you adjust. As I backed out of the driveway, I said it out loud, just once, to hear how it sounded in the quiet morning. They removed me. Now I remove them. The heater hummed. The snow glowed. And for the first time since last night, I felt something close to steadiness again. I drove toward Martin's office, my notebook on the seat beside me, its first 2 steps written in ink that wouldn't fade. The day had begun. So had the plan. Martin's office was 20 minutes from my house, a brick building with a small blue sign that most people drove past without noticing. I had been there only twice before. Once when Tom and I updated our will, and once when Ethan bought his first home and needed help reading the documents. Back then, he'd trusted me enough to ask questions. Back then, he'd listened. I parked in the same visitor spot as always, grabbed my notebook from the seat beside me, and walked inside. The lobby was quiet, just the faint sound of a printer running behind the front desk. Jenna, the receptionist, looked up from her computer. "Mrs. Monroe, good morning." "Morning, Jenna," I said. "Is Martin in?" "He is. Let me tell him you're here." She disappeared down the hallway. I took a seat in the waiting area. A row of framed certificates lined the wall. Law degrees, bar admissions, nothing flashy. Martin never tried to impress. He was the kind of man who believed results mattered more than appearances. A moment later, he stepped into the lobby. His glasses sat low on his nose the way they always did when he'd already started his day too early. "Helen," he said warmly, "come in." I followed him to his office. He closed the door gently behind us, not dramatically, just enough to give the room privacy. Papers were stacked neatly on his desk, a steaming mug of tea sitting off to the side. "What brings you in?" he asked, motioning for me to sit. I didn't waste time. "I need to update my will." He lifted an eyebrow. "All right. Same structure as before?" "No." He waited. Martin never rushed the people who came to him. That was one of the reasons I trusted him. "I want my son removed," I said. "Completely." He set his tea down slowly. "Removed." "Yes." "And the beneficiaries?" "The Veterans Foundation," I said. "And Sophie." He nodded once. "Not Ethan?" "No." "Lydia?" he asked. I gave a dry breath. "Absolutely not." He opened a folder, pulled out the previous version of my will, and placed it on the desk. "Tell me what happened." "I was told I don't belong in my son's home anymore," I said. "On Christmas dinner." Martin didn't react dramatically. He didn't gasp or shake his head. He leaned back in his chair and said, "That's a clear message." "It was." "So," he said, steepling his fingers, "you're responding." "I'm correcting," I replied. He gave the smallest hint of a smile. "Fair enough." He picked up a pen and began writing notes. "Asset distribution remains the same, except the son is removed. Veterans Foundation receives primary allocation. Granddaughter receives secondary." "Yes." "I'll need you to initial several clauses, and you'll sign the new version today." I nodded. "That's fine." He looked at me over the rim of his glasses. "You sure about this, Helen? Changes like this have weight." "I'm completely sure," I said. "If he disowned me last night, I can disown him today." Martin didn't say anything for a moment. Then he opened a drawer, took out a fresh document template, and slid it in front of me. "All right, let's do it." He reviewed each section with his usual precision. He explained every clause, every shift, every protection. I listened carefully, asked 2 questions, initialed where he pointed, and signed where he indicated. My hand didn't shake, not once. When we finished, he placed the final document in a folder. "Effective immediately," he said. Your assets are protected under these terms. No one can challenge this without challenging your competence. I'm aware. And that's not an issue, he added. You're sharper than half the people I meet in this office. I'm just tired of being disrespected, I said. That's all. That's enough reason to act. I nodded. He leaned back. Do you expect a reaction? He'll find out eventually, I said. Not today. Good, Martin replied. Let things settle before the next step. I'm going to the bank after this, I said. He exhaled once, like he approved. Locking accounts? Yes. That's wise. I closed my notebook. This isn't anger, Martin. I know, he said. This is clarity. I stood. He stood with me, offering his hand. I shook it firmly. Call me if things escalate, he said. I'm on your side. I know. As I walked toward the door, he added, And Helen? Yes? You did the right thing. I didn't answer. I just nodded and left the office quietly. Outside, the air was crisp. The sun had finally come up, turning the parking lot into a pale reflection of morning light. I got into my car, placed the folder on the passenger seat, and rested my hand on it for a moment. Pen on paper. Decision made. No turning back. I started the engine and backed out of the parking space. The next step was already written in my notebook. The bank. The bank lobby was quiet when I stepped inside, the kind of quiet that told me everything here worked on rules and proof, not excuses. Exactly what I needed. A teller glanced up, recognized me, and waved me toward the private offices. Eli's free, she announced. He can see you now. I nodded once and followed the hallway. My steps were steady. No shaking, no second guessing. Last night had burned through the last drop of hesitation I had left. Eli opened his office door the moment he spotted me. Mrs. Monroe, come on in. His tone was polite, but neutral, the way professionals sound when they know something serious is coming. I took the seat across from him and placed my notebook on the table, open to step 2. I need all joint accounts locked, I explained plainly. Every single one. He blinked. Locked? Yes. He pulled up my file. Your son is listed on 3 accounts. Do you want his access restricted or removed? I cut in. Completely. He straightened. All right. Let me get into the system. While he typed, the soft hum of the computer filled the room. I watched his expression shift. Neutral, then curious, then tight. Mrs. Monroe, he murmured. Were you aware of an attempt to open a new credit line yesterday? No. It was submitted under your name. Process details. He rotated the screen. They tried to request $40,000, same address, but the signature didn't match your file. The system flagged it. My fingers tightened around the notebook, but my voice stayed steady. Close it. It's already frozen, he replied, but I can permanently lock it so no one can try again without you standing in front of me. Do that. His hands moved fast, keys clicking with purpose. Done. It's sealed. I exhaled slowly. Not relief, just acknowledgement. Good. Eli studied me for a moment. Should I be aware of any situation? There's no situation, I answered. I'm correcting a mistake. He didn't push further. Smart man. He scrolled through more screens. I'll remove access from the 3 joint accounts. And transfer control to my new personal account. He looked up. You want to open one today? Yes. No secondary names? None. He nodded. Understood. He printed the forms. I filled them out one by one, my handwriting sharp and firm. No shaky letters. No hesitation. Just decisions finally made in the right direction. While he scanned the documents, he glanced at me again. Once this is complete, your son won't be able to view balances, move funds, or request account statements. That's the goal. He kept working. These accounts have been open for years. Are you sure? I lifted my eyes. Yes. That ended the conversation. A moment later, he pushed a freshly printed packet toward me. Here are the closures, freezes, and confirmations. Everything is finalized. I slid it into my notebook. Enable fraud alerts for anything tied to my name. Already done. You'll get immediate notifications. Good. He hesitated, then spoke carefully. If someone close to you is trying to use your identity or assets, these protections will stop them. I know. And if it escalates, it won't, I interrupted. Not on my end. He nodded, then added, all accounts your son touched are sealed. He'll find out when he tries to log in. And that's his consequence, not my problem. A faint, respectful smile appeared on his face. Mrs. Monroe, you handled this fast. I'm not slow, I replied. I've just been quiet. I stood, shook his hand once, and walked out of the office. The teller watched me pass, maybe sensing something had shifted. She didn't ask questions. No one needed to. Outside, snow had begun to fall again, soft flakes landing on my coat. I didn't rush to the car. I didn't hide from the cold. I felt it full on my face, clean and honest. When I sat in the driver's seat, I opened my notebook. Step 2, bank, complete. Step 3, wait. I closed the notebook gently. They expected tears. They expected weakness. They expected the mother they could push aside. They did not expect this version of me. I started the engine. The heater hummed to life, brushing away the frost on the windshield. As the view cleared, so did everything else. No access, no leverage, no more chances. This was my line in the snow, and I had no intention of erasing it. The house was quiet when I stepped inside. I hung up my coat, set my notebook on the counter, and warmed a cup of tea. My mind was still sharp from the bank, steady, clear, ready for whatever came next. My phone buzzed before I could take a sip. Caroline Price, Lydia's cousin, the one who always watched everything and told nothing. If she was calling me now, it wasn't casual. I answered. Caroline? Her voice dropped fast. Helen, listen carefully. You need to hear this. I leaned against the counter. Go on. I was at Lydia's last night. She and Ethan were talking about you and about the villa. My grip tightened around the mug. What about it? They're planning to use Langford Villa as collateral for a private loan, some investment deal they're trying to pull together. I kept my tone flat. Did my name come up? Caroline hesitated. Yes. Lydia told Ethan she'll sign if we push her the right way. I closed my eyes for exactly one beat. Not hurt, just confirmation. And Ethan? I asked. He didn't argue. He just let her talk like it was already settled. A cold steadiness unfurled through me. Anything else? Caroline's voice sharpened. They're coming to your house tonight. Lydia kept saying, we'll bring champagne. She'll feel flattered. I straightened. Flattered? Yes. I looked around my kitchen, the clean counters, the quiet room, the life I'd built without their help. Lydia thought a bottle of champagne could blind me. Thank you for calling, I told Caroline. I'm sorry, Helen. I didn't know how bad it was until now. It's not bad, I replied. It's clear. She exhaled. What are you planning to do? Exactly what they expect, I answered, and nothing they're prepared for. Silence filled the line for a moment. Then Caroline whispered, Good luck. I don't need luck. When the call ended, I set my tea down and flipped open my notebook. Step 4. Invite them. Step 5. Prepare the trap. My handwriting didn't shake. I walked through the living room slowly, checking the table, the chairs, the lighting. Everything needed to be clean, simple, direct, just like the conversation I was about to have with them. No drama, no raised voice, just truth out loud. At 2:15, I texted Ethan, dinner at my place, 7 p.m. Bring Lydia. We need to talk. It took him less than a minute to respond. Great, Mom. We'll bring something. Of course they would. 30 seconds later, Lydia texted me separately. Champagne tonight. Let's celebrate your future. A winking emoji. She truly believed she was the smartest person in the room. I put my phone down and started wiping the dining table. Not because it needed cleaning, but because I wanted nothing on that table except their intentions and my answers. Around 3 p.m., I called Margaret. I need you here tomorrow morning, I told her. Not tonight. For what? She asked. You'll see. She paused. You sound different. I'm done giving warnings. Margaret's voice warmed. Good. Make them learn. When I hung up, I walked through each room of the house, collecting the documents that would matter tomorrow. Property records, receipts, copies of signature cards, everything lined up in a neat stack. I didn't need these tonight. Tonight was about letting them speak freely. At 6:30, snow began falling again, slow, steady flakes settling across the porch. I stood by the window, watching the white coat spread across my walkway. My phone pinged one more time. On our way. Lydia. I poured the last of my tea down the sink, rinsed the cup, and set it upside down on the rack. Then I took my notebook, closed it gently, and placed it on the sideboard. Everything was ready. At exactly 6:58, headlights swept across my driveway. Engine off, doors closing. Quick footsteps on the porch. I didn't open the door right away. I gave them a moment to stand there, waiting in the cold, thinking they were in control. Then I unlocked it and pulled it open. Ethan lifted a bottle of champagne, smiling like he was bringing peace. We brought something special for tonight. Lydia stepped forward in her red coat, eyes bright with confidence she hadn't earned. Let's toast to new opportunities, Helen. I stepped aside, letting them walk into my warm living room. Opportunities, I echoed. They didn't hear the edge in my voice, but they would, very soon. I let them walk into the dining room first. Lydia moved like she was entering a stage, eyes scanning everything, looking for signs she still had control. Ethan trailed behind her, holding the champagne like he wasn't sure if it was a gift or a bribe. The table was set simply, plates, glasses, nothing extra, no food. I'd done that on purpose. Lydia noticed immediately. Oh, you didn't cook? We're talking first, I replied. Food can wait. Her smile tightened. Of course, we actually prefer that. We have exciting news. I pulled out my chair and sat. Then start. Ethan took a seat too quickly, bumping the table. His nerves were showing. Lydia placed the champagne down with a soft click and eased into her chair like this was her board meeting. Okay, she began, folding her hands. We found a perfect opportunity. A development near Lake Spencer. Guaranteed growth. High return. Practically no risk. Ethan nodded too fast. It's a chance for us to build something as a family. Family. They loved that word when it benefited them. I kept my voice even. What exactly do you need from me? Lydia leaned in, lowering her tone like she was sharing a secret. Just one signature. One. To use the villa as temporary collateral. I looked at her. Temporary? She brightened. Yes, the bank will release the lien as soon as the deal closes. 2, maybe 3 months. You're certain? Absolutely. And we brought the paperwork. She slid a thin folder across the table. Much too thin to be legitimate. Ethan echoed, It's nothing complicated. I didn't touch the folder. Why my house? Ethan cleared his throat. It's the only property with enough value to secure the loan. Ours doesn't qualify. And your savings? That's for Sophie. Lydia jumped in quickly. We can't risk that. I nodded slowly. But you can risk my home. Her face tightened again. It's not risk. It's leverage. I kept watching her. Why not use your own assets? Because this is a family investment, she insisted. We all benefit. All of us? I asked. Lydia blinked. Of course. Interesting, I murmured. Because your pitch sounds like you benefit first. She straightened. Helen, this is how families grow wealth. I tapped the table once. Open the folder. Ethan swallowed. We already went over. Open it, I repeated. He flipped it open. A single page, a signature line, no disclosures. No terms, no lender details. This isn't a contract, I stated. It's bait. Lydia stiffened. It's the preliminary form. They'll send the full documents after you sign. No reputable bank works like that. Her jaw twitched. You'll just have to trust us. I leaned back. Trust requires honesty. Ethan shifted in his chair. Mom, we wouldn't let anything happen. You already did. They froze. I waited a beat. Tell me something. Who came up with this plan? Lydia straightened. We discuss everything together. So you approve of using pressure to get my signature? I don't know what you mean. She'll sign if we push her the right way. Both of them stiffened. Lydia, those were your words. Her face drained. That's not... Caroline, she twisted... She only repeated what she heard. Ethan looked at Lydia, confused. You said that? Lydia snapped back. Don't look at me like that. You agreed. He flinched at her tone. I reached for the folder and slid it back across the table. Let's stop pretending. You need my house because you can't get this deal approved without it. It's a good opportunity, Ethan whispered. For you, I corrected. Lydia leaned closer, voice sharp. Helen, you're being impossible. No, I replied calmly. I'm being very clear. She threw her hands up. Fine. What do you want? I looked directly into her eyes. To watch you realize something. Lydia frowned. Realize what? You came here asking for something that isn't yours. I let the silence stretch before I delivered the next line. And you don't even know you lost access to it yesterday. Ethan blinked. Lost access? The villa, I said. It's no longer available for loans, liens, investments, or collateral of any kind. Lydia shook her head. That's impossible. The title is still in your name. Yes, I replied, but the ownership isn't. She froze. What? It's in a trust. Ethan's face went pale. When did you... After Christmas dinner. Lydia slammed her palm on the table. You can't just do that. I can, and I did. Her voice climbed. This is unfair. Fair, I corrected, would have been you respecting the person you came to exploit. Ethan finally spoke, voice cracking. Mom, why would you do something like this? I met his eyes. You removed me from your family when you told me I didn't belong there. I'm simply accepting your decision. He swallowed hard. We didn't think... No, I cut him off. You didn't. Lydia grabbed her coat. We're leaving. You should, I replied. We're done here. They walked toward the door in stiff silence. Halfway across the room, Ethan turned back. Mom, can we talk tomorrow? No, I answered. Tomorrow belongs to consequences. I opened the door for them. Cold air rushed in, lifting Lydia's hair, turning Ethan's breath into fog. She glared at me. You'll regret this. I don't regret protecting myself. I closed the door slowly, quiet, controlled, final, and the house went still. Very still. They had walked straight into their own plan. Tomorrow they'd walk straight into mine. They showed up earlier than I expected. I had just finished arranging the documents on my living room table when the doorbell rang. One long press, one short. Lydia's pattern. Impatient, entitled, predictable. I opened the door to find both of them on my porch, shoulders tight, eyes wide. Ethan looked like he hadn't slept. Lydia looked like she hadn't stopped rehearsing excuses. Margaret stood behind me, arms folded, just as we planned. Martin Cole sat in the armchair near the fireplace, calm, unreadable, briefcase at his feet. Ethan stepped inside first. Mom, we need to talk. Lydia followed immediately. Last night was a misunderstanding. I motioned toward the sofa. Sit. They both lowered themselves slowly, scanning the room. Margaret by the window, Martin with his legal pad, the slim black recorder resting on the table. Lydia's eyes locked on it. Her smile wavered. I sat across from them. Let's start. Ethan ran a hand across his face. Mom, you surprised us. We didn't know about the trust. You could have included us in the decision. No, I responded calmly. You excluded me first. Lydia's jaw tightened. This isn't what you think. I reached forward and tapped the recorder. Let's check. Her voice sharpened. What is that for? Clarity, she scoffed. You don't need that. I do, I replied. You talk freely when you think no one is listening. Martin leaned forward slightly. Helen, whenever you're ready. I clicked the play button. The room changed instantly. Lydia's voice filled the air, her real voice, the one she used when she wasn't pretending to be sweet. She'll sign if we push her. She's old. She doesn't understand investments. Just keep her flattered and she'll give us what we need." Ethan's voice followed, hesitant, but unmistakable. "Just make sure she doesn't back out. The house is the only asset big enough." Lydia. "We bring champagne. She'll feel guilty. She always does." Silence slammed into the room like a door. Ethan's mouth dropped open. "Mom, how did you get—" "I didn't record you," I replied. "You recorded yourselves, in my home, loud enough for Caroline to hear from the hallway." Lydia turned pale. "She told you?" "Yes. She lied." "I heard your voices." Lydia swallowed hard. "You're twisting this." I tapped the recorder again. "It's your tone that twists everything." She shot up from the sofa. "This is taken out of context." "No," Martin interjected, his voice even. "This is the context." He opened his folder and slid a printed transcript across the table. Ethan stared at his own words in black and white, like he didn't recognize himself. I continued, "You wanted to use Langford Villa as collateral for a loan tied to a private investment. You planned to pressure me into signing." "That's not pressure," Ethan muttered. "It was an opportunity. An opportunity you didn't own." Lydia stepped forward, trying desperately to regain control. "Helen, we're family. We were trying to build a future for all of us." I looked up at her. "You excluded me from that future. You only needed my signature." Her voice rose. "You're overreacting." Martin lifted another paper. "This isn't overreaction. This is attempted financial coercion." Ethan's voice cracked. "Mom, we didn't mean harm." "You meant convenience," I corrected. Margaret stepped in. "Say it plain, Helen." I nodded. "You two gambled on the assumption that I was weak. You counted on guilt, not consent." Lydia pointed at the recorder. "Erase it." "No. That's private." "It was in my house." Ethan's hand shook. "Mom, please, let's talk without everyone here." "No," I replied. "You made these choices openly. You can face them openly." Martin addressed them directly. "The trust is sealed, legally untouchable. Any attempt to use her property without consent would result in criminal investigation." Lydia blinked rapidly. "Criminal?" "Correct," Martin continued. "You admitted intent on recording." Ethan leaned forward, voice breaking. "Mom, we messed up. Just tell us what to do." "You listen," I answered. The room stilled. I looked at them, my son with his lowered shoulders, Lydia with her trembling hands, both suddenly aware their control was gone. "You told me I wasn't family," I said quietly. "You removed me from your life. Now I'm removing you from mine." Ethan whispered, "Mom, please." I stood. "You'll receive formal notice of the changes." "What changes?" Lydia's voice shook. "Everything you took for granted," I replied. "You lost it last night." She stared at me, speechless. I walked to the door and opened it. Cold air swept inside. "You may leave." Ethan looked like he wanted to stay, to argue, to fix something he'd shattered with his own hands. But Lydia pulled him up by the arm. "This is absurd," she muttered. "No," I answered. "This is consequence." They stepped outside. The snow was falling harder now, catching in their hair, their clothes, their silence. Just before Ethan turned to the car, he asked, "Is this really it?" I met his eyes. It already was. And then I closed the door. Slow, firm, final. The recorder's light blinked once and faded. Martin arrived right on time the next morning, a folder tucked under his arm, and that steady look he always carried when he had something final to deliver. Margaret stood near the window, arms folded, keeping an eye on Ethan's car pulling up outside. The air in my living room felt colder than usual, but not from the weather. It was the kind of cold that comes before a clean ending. Ethan walked in first, shoulders stiff. Lydia trailed behind him, eyes already red like she'd spent the morning practicing a cry she hoped would work on me. Neither one looked brave. I motioned them toward the dining table where everything waited. Papers, stamps, and the little red light from Martin's recorder. No one took a seat. Martin opened the folder. "Everything has been filed," Every asset is secure. The villa is protected under an irrevocable trust. Nothing can be moved, touched, borrowed against, or claimed by any outside party. Lydia let out a shaky breath. Helen, we didn't mean for things to get permanent. I kept my eyes on her face. Permanent is exactly the point. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck like he used to do when he broke things as a teenager. Mom, we can just fix this. We can talk. We didn't know you'd take everything so personally. Personally? My voice stayed flat. You removed me from your life first. Margaret leaned against the counter. Her presence made me feel steadier. Lydia's lips trembled. She reached for Ethan's arm, but he pulled it slightly away, just enough to show tension between them. Martin set down another document. Yesterday's recording is here. Their statements are attached, and the trust documents are complete. The ownership transfer is already stamped and logged. I turned to Ethan, giving him the full weight of a mother who had run out of softness. You stood in your own house and told me I didn't belong. You let her speak for you. You made your choice. Ethan's voice cracked. It was Christmas. We were stressed. Things got out of hand. No, I replied. Things were clear, very clear. Lydia stepped forward. We brought champagne last night because we wanted to make things better. We were trying. Trying? I lifted the corner of a document. You tried to use Langford Villa as collateral. That's not trying to fix things. That's opportunistic. Her mouth opened, then closed again. Martin tapped the table gently. To avoid any confusion, Helen's assets are no longer within reach. Not through loans, not through inheritance, not through marriage, and not through emergency claims. Legally, everything is sealed. Ethan swallowed hard. Mom, that's my future too. Yes, I answered. And you threw it away. Silence hit the room like a dropped plate. Lydia finally broke. Her voice thinned into panic. Helen, we just wanted a little help. That's all. The business idea needed a boost, and we thought, I know exactly what you thought. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You thought I'd be quiet. You thought I'd be grateful you let me sit at your table while you planned behind my back. You thought age makes people blind. Lydia's tears spilled, but I felt nothing. Not anger, not pity, just clarity. Martin pushed the final paper toward me. One last signature. Asked. I picked up the pen. Ethan stepped closer, like he could stop the ink from touching the page. Mom, wait. Please. Let's redo this. We'll apologize. We'll change. I pressed the signature clean and sharp. You had that chance last night. Margaret let out a quiet breath behind me, almost like relief. Ethan looked at the papers, then at me. You're really taking me out of the will. You removed me first, I replied. All I did was match your decision. He looked stunned, as if the logic had never occurred to him. Lydia wiped her cheeks. But the villa, you can't just give up on family. You can't expect us to survive without... Stop. My tone cut the air clean. Family isn't a discount card. You don't get to use it when it benefits you and then revoke it when it's inconvenient. She froze. Martin closed the folder. We're done here. This concludes all legal updates. I straightened the stack of papers. You should leave now. Ethan took a step toward me. Mom, don't do this. Don't. This? I nodded at the documents. This is the consequence of what you did. Lydia grabbed Ethan's wrist. Let's go. She's not changing her mind. She was right. I didn't even consider it. They walked toward the door slowly, like people leaving a funeral they didn't expect to attend. At the doorway, Ethan glanced back one last time. Are we really finished? For now, I answered. You'll have to figure out the rest without my help. Lydia inhaled sharply. We didn't think you'd go this far. I opened the door wider. You underestimated the wrong woman. They stepped outside. Snow had started again, covering the porch in a thin white layer. I watched them cross it without looking back. When the door closed between us, the quiet in the room wasn't bitter. It was clean. Martin gathered his things. You handled that with dignity. Margaret smiled at me. You didn't just take your power back, Helen. You reminded them you never lost it. I walked to the table, touched the sealed packet of documents, and let out a steady breath. Justice, delivered without shouting, and I didn't feel the slightest shake in my hands. I slept better that night than I had in months. No nightmares, no replay of Ethan's voice telling me I didn't belong. When the sun came in through the kitchen window the next morning, everything looked sharper, quieter, cleaner. My phone buzzed at 8. It was Martin. Is everything filed? I asked before he even greeted me. All of it. Stamped, logged, and confirmed. They can't touch anything now. A small breath left my chest. Good. Then I'm done with this part. They may still try something, he added. If they do, call me. I will. I hung up and placed the phone face down on the counter. No shaking, no guilt, just a strange calm I hadn't felt in a long time. Margaret knocked 10 minutes later, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. You look like you've slept for a year. Feels close, I told her. Come in. She stepped inside, glanced around the living room, then lowered her voice. Did they try contacting you last night? No. I picked up one of the cups. And I don't plan on contacting them. Margaret nodded. Good. Boundaries matter. I walked into the living room and looked at the wall of family photos. Christmas mornings from years ago, birthdays, a vacation Ethan barely remembered, all those moments frozen in time, moments they'd forgotten when it mattered. I opened the small storage drawer under the console table. Hand me a box, I told Margaret. You're really doing it? Yes, I'm clearing space. I took the frames down one by one, wrapping them in brown paper. Not out of anger, not out of bitterness, just order. I needed the house to match the new reality. Margaret rested a hand on the back of a chair. Does this hurt at all? It hurt yesterday, I answered, but I'm not dragging it into today. When the last frame was boxed, I slid the tape across the top and pushed it gently under the console table. My phone buzzed again, this time a number I didn't recognize. I watched it until the screen went dark. No voicemail, no text. Whoever it was could wait. I poured more coffee and sat at the table. Margaret sat across from me, keeping her gaze steady. Do you regret any of it? She asked. No. I stirred the coffee once. Respect goes both ways. They didn't offer any. I finally returned the favor. Margaret smiled. That's the most Helen thing I've heard all week. We talked for a few minutes about normal things, weather, the grocery prices, a show she'd been watching. It felt good, simple, real. When she left, the house felt peaceful, not lonely. I walked through each room slowly, touching the edges of furniture, checking the locks, straightening a cushion here and there, not because anything was out of place, because I felt in control again. Around noon, I opened the drawer where I'd stored older papers and pulled out the thick envelope of estate records. I added Martin's new documents to the front of the stack, every page clean, stamped, and final. As I slid the folder back into the drawer, something caught my eye, the old photo Sophie had taken last summer. I lifted it gently. She'd drawn a little heart in the corner with a pink marker. That one stayed. I put it on the shelf beside the lamp. The rest could stay boxed. My phone buzzed again, quieter this time. A text popped up. Unknown number. Can we talk? I locked the screen without opening it. I walked to the kitchen window. Outside, the snow had melted in patches, leaving the ground half white, half brown. I thought about the night before, the way Ethan's face changed when he heard the truth read out loud, the way Lydia cried when she realized the villa was gone forever, the silence that followed. Consequences were not cruelty. Consequences were choices coming home. I opened the fridge and pulled out leftover soup Margaret brought 2 nights ago. As it warmed on the stove, the house felt steady again, like I'd taken back the steering wheel of my own life. I set the bowl down, added a slice of bread, and took a slow breath before the first spoonful. For the first time in years, the food tasted like something I earned, not something I owed someone. When I finished eating, I wiped the counter, rinsed the bowl, and let the water run warm over my hands. Simple things, ordinary things, things that felt right again. I checked the locks one more time before sitting down with a blanket over my legs. No buzzing phone, no tension in my shoulders, no wondering who might show up. Just peace. True, quiet peace. I leaned back and whispered to myself, some peace cost letting go. And I didn't mind paying it. 2 days after the confrontation, I stepped outside to grab the mail when Antonia Hale waved from across the street. Her winter coat wasn't even zipped, which told me something urgent was coming. "Helen, hold on," she called out, walking across my lawn with that no-nonsense stride she always had. I waited by the porch rail. "Morning, Antonia." She caught her breath. "You need to know what's going around town." "I'm listening." "Word is you've lost your mind," she continued. "Ethan and Lydia were at Gerald's hardware store yesterday. They told people you're confused, unstable, and making wild decisions. Their words, not mine." I let the information settle for a moment. "So that's their next move." Antonia nodded. "I figured you'd want to hear it from someone who doesn't gossip." "I appreciate it." She squeezed my arm. "You're sharper than half the folks in this town. Don't let their nonsense get under your skin." "Oh, it's not under my skin," I assured her. "They're just confirming who they really are." She gave a tight nod. "Good, just stay ahead of them." After she walked off, I stepped inside, locked the door, and pulled out my phone. One call. That was all it took. Margaret picked up immediately. "Everything all right?" "There's a rumor," I told her while slipping off my coat. "Apparently I've lost my mind." Margaret's tone sharpened. "Of course they're going for that angle." "I want to shut it down." "Then do it properly," she replied. "Go to your doctor. Make it official." "I'm already grabbing my keys." 20 minutes later, I sat in the waiting room at Dr. Newell's clinic. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A nurse called my name, and I followed her to the office where Dr. Newell greeted me with a warm nod. "What brings you in today, Helen?" "I need a cognitive evaluation," I told him plainly. "I want documentation, full assessment." His eyebrows rose slightly. "Is everything all right at home?" "Everything is under control," I replied. "I just need proof." He studied my face for a moment and seemed to understand. "We can do that." He ran me through every exam, memory tests, pattern recognition, numeric recall, reasoning tasks. I moved through each one calmly, answering everything cleanly. Halfway through, he glanced at his notes with a small approving look. After the final exercise, he closed his folder. "You're perfectly sound, sharper than most patients your age. I'll print everything. I'll need a signed statement, too." "You'll have it." Minutes later, I stood at the counter holding a stamped envelope. Clean proof, no loopholes, no room for interpretation. I walked out of the clinic feeling steady, not triumphant, just ready. Margaret called as I reached my car. "How'd it go?" "Better than they expected," I replied. "I have everything." "You want me to come over?" "No, I'm going to handle one more thing first." Yeah, when I got home, I sat at the dining table and opened the envelope. Every test score sat there in black ink, high marks across the board. I placed the papers into a new folder and wrote a date on the corner. Order mattered. As I organized the documents, Margaret knocked on the door anyway. I opened it and she stepped in holding a grocery bag. "You didn't have to come," I told her. "I know, but I figured you'd want lunch while you file your victory papers." I couldn't help a small smile. "You figured right." She put the groceries down and scanned the table. "This looks official." "It is." She picked up one of the pages. "You passed everything?" "With room to spare." "Good," she breathed, "because rumors spread fast in town. Facts spread faster." We ate together while I walked her through my plan. Once we finished, she leaned back and crossed her arms. "You're handling this with more grace than most people I know." "Grace isn't the goal," I answered. "Clarity is." My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number appeared on the screen. "Unknown. We heard you were struggling. Ethan wants to help. Please call." I locked the screen without responding. Margaret noticed. "Them? Yes. Let them talk to themselves." "That's the plan." I placed the cognitive records into the file cabinet, locked it, and slipped the key into my pocket. Margaret watched me. "Feels good, doesn't it?" "It feels necessary." Around 3, Antonia stopped by again, tapping on the glass door. I opened it. "Everything all right?" She lifted her chin. "Your son and his wife were at the grocery store earlier, telling folks you've been making erratic decisions. I may or may not have told them you're sharper than the doctor who checks my cholesterol." "That sounds like you." "I thought you'd want to know." "And Helen?" "Yes?" "Keep doing whatever you're doing. Just make sure it stings." I gave her a quiet nod. "It will." When she left, I looked around my living room. Clean table, organized papers, quiet house. The rumors didn't bother me now. They were noise, background static. The facts were sealed in a folder with my name on it. I sat down, crossed my arms, and let the stillness settle. "Facts shut mouths," I whispered. And for the first time in days, I allowed myself a small, satisfied breath. 4 quiet days passed. No messages, no knocks, no arguments spilling into my porch. For the first time in months, the house felt like mine again. On the 5th morning, something white peeked out from under the welcome mat. A single envelope. My name in looping cursive I recognized immediately. Lydia's. I carried it inside, placed it on the table, and made coffee before touching it again. When I finally opened it, the first line stared back at me. "Helen, I'm sorry for everything." She described stress, money problems, business pressure, misunderstandings, paragraph after paragraph explaining her intentions, not her actions. Nothing in the letter held full ownership. I folded it once, placed it back in the envelope, and slid it inside a drawer. No anger, just clarity. Some things don't deserve a response. Around noon, my phone lit up with Ethan's name, the first time since the legal meeting. I took a breath and answered. "Mom, it's me." "I know." "Sophie keeps asking for you," he continued, voice thick. "Every night before bed, every morning at breakfast. She thinks she made you upset." My fingers tightened slightly around the phone. "She didn't do anything. Can we come by? Just me and her. No drama." I paused long enough to be sure. "Bring her. Leave everything else at home." 2 hours later, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, Sophie darted forward before Ethan could say a word. "Grandma!" She wrapped her arms around my waist with the kind of honesty only a child has. I leaned down and held her. "I missed you too, honey." She looked up at me, eyes wide. "Are you mad at Daddy?" I tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. "No, sweetheart. I just don't reward bad manners." Her little shoulders relaxed. Ethan's did the opposite. They stepped inside. Sophie ran toward the living room with her drawing notebook, leaving Ethan standing by the doorway, hands in his pockets. "I didn't know if you'd let us in," he started gently. "You're here for her. That's why the door opened." He nodded once. "I understand that." "Good," I answered. "We're keeping this simple." He followed me into the living room. Sophie already had a page ripped from her notebook, holding it out proudly when she saw me. "Look, Grandma, it's us 3 at Christmas. 3 stick figures under a crooked tree. Me, Ethan, and Sophie. A shaky pink heart over the top." "It's beautiful," I told her. "Can I put it on the fridge?" She beamed. "Yes!" She ran to the kitchen with her drawing. Ethan stayed still, watching her for a long moment before turning back to me. "She missed you every day. I know. And I want to make things right. I'm not asking for anything back. I just don't want to lose this." "You lost access to my estate," I replied, "not access to accountability." He lowered his gaze. "I earned that." "You did." He didn't argue. He didn't defend. That was new. Sophie called from the kitchen. "Grandma, where do I put the star magnet?" "Top corner, honey." Ethan cleared his throat lightly. "I read the trust documents again last night, all of them. I didn't realize how far things had gone. I let Lydia push every line, and I stood there. You didn't just stand there. You joined in." He closed his eyes for a second. "I know." Knowing is good. Doing better is the part that matters. I'm trying, he murmured. Good. Try consistently. Sophie ran back into the living room, clutching her coat. Grandma, can we bake cookies, the ones with chocolate inside? I glanced at Ethan. Do you have time for cookies? I have time for whatever she needs. Then follow her lead. The three of us went into the kitchen. Sophie climbed onto a stool, ready to crack eggs. Ethan helped her measure flour. I mixed the dough. It wasn't perfect coordination, but it felt natural enough. 3 people relearning how to share space. When the cookies went into the oven, Sophie climbed onto my lap with her coloring book. Her little head rested on my shoulder. Grandma, she whispered, are you coming to my school play? If you want me there. Her hand squeezed mine. Front row? Front row, I promised. Ethan watched us quietly, leaning against the doorway. No pressure in his face, just steady hope. You're good with her, he murmured softly. I've had practice. That's why I'm here, he admitted. I want her to grow up with the right people around her. Then you start being one of them. His jaw tightened, not with defensiveness, but determination. I will. Sophie lifted her head. Daddy, can you take a cookie home for Mom? She might be sad. Ethan exhaled slowly. We'll see, sweetheart. Sophie hugged me tighter. I like it here, Grandma. It feels nice. I brushed her shoulder gently. It feels nice because people are behaving. She giggled. Ethan looked away for a second, but a small smile appeared anyway. When the timer beeped, she jumped off my lap. We gathered around the oven and pulled out the golden cookies. Sophie chose one with extra chocolate and handed it to Ethan. You take the first one. He shook his head. It's yours. She pushed it back into his hand. Sharing is nice, Daddy. He finally took it. You're right. After the cookies cooled, I handed Ethan Sophie's coat. You should get her home before she crashes from the sugar. Sophie hugged me again, her cheek warm against mine. Come see me soon? You won't have to ask twice. Ethan stood in the doorway, holding Sophie's hand. Thank you for letting us be here. I know this isn't fixed. I just want the chance to keep showing up. You want a chance? I replied calmly. Then keep earning it. I will. They stepped outside. Sophie waved until the car door closed. When they drove off, the house didn't feel empty. It felt lighter, cleaner. True. I looked at the drawing on my fridge. 3 stick figures under a crooked tree. Not forgiveness. Not forgetting. Just a space reopened by honesty. Christmas morning arrived quiet and steady. No rush, no tension, just the kind of silence that feels earned. I turned on the oven, tied my apron, and opened the jar of vanilla extract. Sophie was already waiting on her stool, kicking her feet like she had a secret. Grandma, can I pour the sugar? You can pour half, I reminded her. The other half goes straight onto your face if I'm not looking. She grinned and poured the cup carefully into the bowl. A little cloud puffed up, and she giggled. You're getting good at this, I noted. That's because you don't yell, she explained simply. I don't yell when people listen. Sophie nodded like that was the most reasonable rule in the world. A soft knock hit the front door. Sophie perked up. Daddy's here. Keep stirring, I told her, wiping my hands on a towel. When I opened the door, Ethan stood there holding a small box wrapped with plain paper. No fancy ribbon, no performance, just effort. Morning, I greeted him. Morning. His voice stayed careful, not scared, not rehearsed, just respectful. That was new. You can come in. She's in the kitchen. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. The house smells good. It's Christmas. It's allowed. Sophie shouted from the kitchen. Daddy, come see. I'm stirring. Ethan walked in and touched her shoulder lightly. Looks like you're the chef today. I'm the boss today, she corrected. I pointed toward the counter. Coffee? If you're making some. I poured 2 mugs and set one in front of him. We stood on opposite sides of the counter while Sophie arranged cookie cutters like she was laying out decorations for a parade. Ethan glanced around the kitchen. Thank you for letting us come this morning. You show up consistently, I replied. That's what earns the door. I'm trying. I can see that. Sophie picked up a Christmas tree cutter and waved it. Grandma, can I do the shapes now? Start with the stars. They cook evenly. While she pressed the cutters into the dough, Ethan leaned closer. I want to keep building this, slowly, without messing it up. You stay steady, I told him. That's all I require. He nodded. No arguments, no defensiveness, just acceptance. Sophie lifted a tray proudly. Look, a snowman with a very tiny head. That snowman skipped breakfast, I replied. She giggled and slid the tray onto the counter. Daddy, put it in the oven, she instructed. Ethan obeyed, and for a moment the three of us stood in the warm kitchen like we'd done it every year. Not perfect, not repaired, just functional, honest. When the timer started ticking, Ethan reached into his coat and held out the wrapped box. I brought this for you. I wanted it to be simple. I opened it. Inside was a small photo frame. Me, him, and Sophie at the park 2 years ago. Sophie had ice cream on her face. Ethan leaned close with a half smile. I remembered the day. No performance, no tension. A real moment. Sophie bounced in place. Daddy picked the frame. I picked the picture. And you picked well, I told her. Can we hang it now? She asked eagerly. Yes, I answered. Let's find a place. We walked to the living room. I scanned the wall. A small open spot near the lamp felt right. Not hidden, not centered, just truthful. I hung the frame and pressed it lightly with my fingertips. Sophie clapped. Grandma, it looks perfect. It looks honest, I corrected gently. Ethan studied it with a quiet breath. I'm glad it fits. It fits because it's real. He understood the message. He didn't push for more. We returned to the kitchen just as the oven beeped. Sophie hopped off her stool. Cookies! I opened the door and pulled out the tray, the warm smell filling the room instantly. Grandma, she asked, can Daddy stay for cookies? I looked at Ethan. If he wants to. I do, he replied. If you're comfortable with it. I'm comfortable. We sat around the table with glasses of milk and a plate of warm cookies. Sophie took a huge bite and kicked her feet in excitement. Ethan watched her for a moment before turning to me. I'm grateful for this. This house stays open to people who act right, I answered. That rule hasn't changed, he nodded. I understand. Sophie reached across the table, placed her small hand on mine, and whispered, This is my favorite Christmas, Grandma. I brushed her knuckles gently. It's a good one, honey. She leaned into me, warm and relaxed. Ethan smiled softly, not intruding, not overstepping, just being present in the only way that mattered. The room stayed quiet for a moment. The good kind of quiet, not the kind built from fear or tension. Just comfort. Warm cookies, soft lights, steady breathing. Ethan finished his cookie. I'll keep showing up. No big speeches, just showing up. I'll take consistency over promises any day, I replied. Sophie stood from her chair and wrapped her arms around me. Grandma, this feels like family again. I kissed the top of her head. Because today, it is. I looked at Ethan. He understood what that meant, and what it didn't mean. Respect entered my house first. Everything else followed. Now, I murmured, tightening my arm around Sophie, that's family. And this time, every word felt earned. When the house finally settled that evening, I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window for a minute. No noise, no fear, no second-guessing. Just a small, steady peace I hadn't felt in a long time. It didn't come from winning anything. It came from choosing myself, standing firm, and keeping only the people who earn a place. If this story reminded you of someone you love, or if it reminded you of your own strength, I hope you hold on to that. We're never too old to reclaim our dignity, and we're never too old to build a quieter, better life. Thank you for spending this time with me today. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this one, stories about family, hard choices, and the kind of justice that arrives quietly. Feel free to subscribe and stay with us. I appreciate you being here. Take care of yourself, stay warm, and I'll see you in the next story.